Hey, we are starting with a new module, Module 4, which is titled as the Mahatma Gandhi and the Change in the Character of the National Movement. As we start with this module, let's just have a quick revision of what we have learned in the last module because Module 3 and 4 are interconnected to each other. Basically, in the last classes, we have tried to talk about the Indian national movement. We all know that the time period which is dated for the Indian national movement is from 1885 to 1947, and most of the historians have divided this time period into the three phases. The first phase is called as the moderate phase, which starts from 1885 to 1905. The second phase is the extremist phase, which starts from 1905 and goes on till 1919. And the third phase is the Gandhian phase, which starts from 1919 and ends in 1947. So, in the last module, we have covered the moderates and the extremist phase. And this module, the module 4, is predominated by the role of Mahatma Gandhi in the Indian national movement. So basically, under this module, we will be covering the time period from 1919 to 1947. Since it is a very long period of time, we will be covering a lot of things. We will be going across the role or the course line of the Indian national movement. Let us see what all we have to cover under this module. As you can see, under this module, we will be covering the five topics. The first topic deals with Gandhi's early career and activism. Under this, we will be focusing on Mahatma Gandhi's ideologies and philosophies and the movements that were launched by him before he was active in India, that is pre 1919. So, under that, we will be covering about the Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Kheda Satyagraha in the year 1917 and 1918. The next topic deals about or talks about the movements that were launched by Mahatma Gandhi or which were the mass movements that were led by Mahatma Gandhi. So under this we will be covering about the non-cooperation movement which was launched in the year 1920, civil disobedience movement which was launched in the year 1930 and the Quit India movement in the year 1942. Further on, we'll talk about the rise of left movements in India. Under that, the focus will be on the Communist Party of India. And then we'll talk about the partitioning of India and the independence of India. These two things, the independence and the partitions, are the two sides of the same coin. So, while talking about the movements that were led by Gandhi, we will also be talking about the activities or the movements or the campaigns that were launched by the All India Muslim League. So I hope you remember that we have talked about the All India Muslim League, that it was established in the year 1906, and this particular body was talking about the concerns of Muslims in India. So we will be trying to trace the course of All India Muslim League from 1906 to 1947, how it gained the momentum and how it negotiated with Britishers as well as the Indian National Congress to gain the independence. Under that, we will be focusing on the three major plans: the August Offer, the Cripps Mission, the Weevils Plan, and the Cabinet Mission plans. These plans were laid in the time period of the Second World War, which is from 1939 to 1945. So we will be covering about these plans as well, how the negotiation took place. And then last topic that we have to talk about is the growth of communalism and partition of India. So yes, we all know that the third phase of the Gandhian phase, which starts from 1919, which is dominated by Gandhi, the Indian national movement or the activities that took place after the 1919, it was dominated by Mahatma Gandhi. That is the reason, or it becomes important for us to study that why it happened so, that what were the ideologies and the philosophies of Gandhi that he dominated the Indian national movement, and he was the charismatic leader at that period of time. People followed him, a lot of followers. Whatever that he used to preach, people used to listen, people used to practice that as well. We need to see that why this all happened or what was the personality of Mahatma Gandhi. So before dealing with that, I just want to revise you about quick chronology. Uh, the chronology that we have discussed in the class, you remember that from 1900 till 1920 we have discuss about the important events that took place during this period of time. Under this period of time, there were two important Indian National Congress sessions. One was in the year 1907, the Surat split, which was famous because in that particular year, the Indian National Congress was splitted into two parts, the moderates and the extremists. And the extremists decided to move out from the Indian National Congress and to practice their or to practice and to lead their movement without being a part or under the banner of the Indian National Congress. So this came on till the year 1916. 1916 was the year when the Lucknow Pact was signed in the Lucknow session of the Indian National Congress. Under that session, there were two agreements that were done. Firstly, that the moderates and the extremists will be working together back under the banner of the Indian National Congress. They joined the hands. And secondly, the Indian National Congress and All India Muslim League decided to fight together against the Britishers. Just to remind you that this is again the 1916 is the time period when the First World War was led. So the First World War, which started in the year 1914 and ended in the 1918. The First World War and the coastline of the First World War is important to understand the Indian national movement because they are again interrelated. So, before starting with Gandhi's early activism in India from 1919, let's go through some facts and personality of Mahatma Gandhi. We are going to look into some of the facts of Mahatma Gandhi because this will help us to understand his personality. We'll get to know about his vision, his philosophies, his ideologies, which further on shaped in the Indian national movement. So we all know that Mahatma Gandhi was born on the 2nd of October 1869 in Gujarat. He belonged to a rich family of Gujarat and he pursued the law in his life. He was practicing in London, but in the year 1891 he decided to come back to India and he tried to establish himself in India, but he could not succeed in that. And then in the year 1893 he decided to go back to Durban, which is in UK. From 1893, he due to some case he went to the South Africa and he stayed in South Africa for around 20 years, and the experience that he gained in South Africa changed his philosophies a lot. So let's just talk about his South African ordeal or the experience that he had in South Africa. I just want to discuss one event which shaped his ideology. So due to some case, the Gandhi was asked to go to a city in South Africa to represent his client in the court. He was booked in the first class compartment at a station Maritzburg, the capital of the native. He was asked to change the compartment, and on refusal to do so, he was forcibly ejected and thrown out of the platform. This bitter experience changed the life of Gandhi, for he had to resolve to fight injustice with all his might. He decided that I will be fighting against all the problems that will come in my way. And this incident also saw the innovation of a new weapon to fight against the oppression and exploitation, and that weapon was the non-violence. While traveling from Maritzburg to the Charlestown, from where he had to go, he sat at the stage coach. He was asked to sit beside the coachman, and the leader of the coach sat inside with the white passenger. So, the reason why he was asked to move out of the first class was because of his race. It was not that he did not have a ticket there, he was carrying a valid ticket. He was entitled to sit in that first class seat, but he was forced to move out is because of his race. So another thing that I want to remind you over here is that South Africa was a colony of the Britishers. So the Britishers were looking after the administration of South Africa at that particular period of time. Coming back to the story, when he reached to the Johannesburg, he went straight to the hotel, but there was no vacancy apparently because of his race again. And the next day, he decided to fight against all these problems that he was facing in South Africa. And he also decided to improve the conditions of Indians who are living in South Africa. He took up the help of influential businessmen Tyab Haji Khan Mohammed and called a meetings of the Indians to discuss their problems. You'll come across all these facts under the reading module. Gandhi spoke about the honesty, hygiene, and unity among various sections and suggested the formation of an association to make representatives to the authorities concerned. He also offered not only to form an association or to have a legal representation, but also offered to teach the English to all those who so wanted and to devote time for this association. The association so formed used to hold monthly meetings, and Gandhi became more closely associated with Indians and their problems than before. Due to all these efforts that he took, he emerged as a leading figure among the Indians to fight for their legitimate rights. And during his stay in the South Africa, he developed his weapons to fight against all the injustice. It was dependent upon the Satyagraha and Ahimsa. So these two, the Satyagraha and Ahimsa or the non-violence, became the foundations of the Gandhian philosophies and the ideologies which will be practiced in the Indian national movement. A very good source to understand Mahatma Gandhi's views, philosophies, and ideology is the book written by himself in the year 1909, Hind Swaraj. In this In this slide, we'll come across this book, Hind Swaraj, in a nutshell manner. Since you guys do not have Hind Swaraj PDF version, firstly, you can easily download it from any site. It is easily available on the Google. Apart from that, I would highly recommend you to read an article which has been circulated to you. But this article is written by Rudranshu Mukherjee and it is titled as Gandhi Swaraj. This article gives you a gist about Gandhi's Swaraj. So let's come to this book. Basically, Hind Swaraj is a book which is written by Gandhi in the year 1909, and Gandhi has expressed his views on Swaraj and he has provided a strong critique to the modern civilization. Gandhi believes that the real enemy was the modern industrial civilization and not the British political domination. He presented a moral critique of Western civilization. Gandhi interpreted the Industrial Revolution as having brought about a radical transformation in people's life and in the people's attitude to themselves and to the world around them. Fundamental to this transformation was the premise that through reason and science, human beings were capable of mastering nature and thus fulfilling their desires and wants. Gandhi believed in Gandhi believed that this will inevitably lead to the greed, to competition, and finally to the violence. He also believed that the industrial capitalism is very bad as it is disrupting the cosmic harmony as it considers the bodily pleasures important and is driven by greed and destroys the self sustaining local industry. By that he meant the village industries which were functioning in India. So the arrival or the advent of the industrialization in India is resulting into the disruption of the village or the cottage industries that were existing in India. Gandhi not only gave a critique to the modern civilization, but he also provided an alternative to the modern civilization. According to the Gandhi, an alternative could be seen in the traditional India, which was untouched by the modern civilization and not influenced by it. Gandhi believed that in the traditional village world of India, life was governed by a common morality by which each member performed his duty. This made it to the exact opposite of modern society, whose members chased their own self interested and individualistic goals. He believed that the village industries formed or the villages are formed by the peasants who are non-violent, and since these people are non-violent they only practice the passive resistance in the form of satyagraha, which is again the tool or the foundation of the Gandhian ideology. Another important point that has been discussed in this book is Swaraj. Gandhi used Swaraj to denote both the self rule and self government. Swaraj was an ideal for the individual and for the nation. To be a devotee of Satyagraha, Gandhi said an individual had to be capable of self rule. Swaraj has to be experienced by each one for himself. Gandhi laid down a code of conduct that would help individuals attain Swaraj. Every individual who chose the path of Satyagraha would learn to regulate his life by observing perfect chastity, adopting poverty, following truth, and cultivating fearlessness. A Satyagrahi leading a disciplined and ethical life would be an exemplar for other individuals, and the pursuit of such a life on the part of all individuals would be the necessary precondition for Swaraj. Swaraj at the individual level, where each person will become his own ruler, would lead to the Swaraj for the nation. So basically, he's stating that self rule is the foundation for the self government. Apart from discussing about the Swaraj and the critique to the modern civilization, Gandhi also believed that the modern state was bad as it enjoys the monopoly of violence and demands impersonal or exclusive loyalty from its citizens. Gandhi also felt the liberal democracy was too individualistic as it emphasized rights, not duties, and self interest, not selflessness. I hope by now you have a little bit idea about Gandhian philosophy. Apart from reading Rudranshu Mukherjee's article or Mahatma Gandhi's book Hind Swaraj, you can also read an article written by Michael Emin Sala titled as Satyagraha in Mahatma Gandhi's Political Philosophy. This article is very interesting to read because you'll come across the characteristic or the main features of Ram Rajya. As we all know that Mahatma Gandhi promoted the Ram Rajya, but what does it mean and what were the features of Ram Rajya you'll come across under this article. You'll also come across that how this concept is utopian or what are the problems that have been faced by the nation on a large scale that we cannot achieve the Ram Rajya. So I request you all to please go through this article. Moving further on, let's talk about Gandhi's early activism in India. So in this slide and the next slide, I will be covering the time period from 1915 to 1918. This is the time period when Gandhi entered into India, but he was not very active or he was not very popular. Before entering or before launching the non cooperation movement in the year 1920, what all activities that were done by Mahatma Gandhi will be looked into this in the next slide. So, Mahatma Gandhi landed at Bombay on 9th of January 1915. This is this day is also celebrated by Government of India as Pravasi Bharatiya Divas every year. For a few years, Gandhi tried to keep himself aloof from the political matters. This was advised him by his mentor or the political guru, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Gokhale asked Mahatma Gandhi to take a tour of India and to look after what are the problems that have been faced by the Indians, and then you take a step into the politics and try to reform all the problems that you have seen during this period of time. But the first major public appearance of Mahatma Gandhi was in the year 1916. Mahatma Gandhi attended the opening ceremony of BHU, Banaras Hindu University, and he attended that meeting, and it was his first public appearance. After attending this opening ceremony of BHU, Gandhi highlighted and took a tour of India, and he highlighted the three major wrongs that were going on in India. These three are the Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Kheda. In the next slide, we'll talk about these three wrongs. Let us look into the three ventures that were taken by Mahatma Gandhi in the year 1917 and 1918: the Champaran Satyagraha, Ahmedabad mill workers strike, and the Kheda Satyagraha, which helped him to be established as a man who could achieve the concrete reforms in a manner which were different from the established Congress methods, which worked from the top downwards. Rather than going from top to down, Mahatma Gandhi believed in the downward to upward approach. So he focused on the grassroots level problems. While discussing about these three ventures, the Champaran, Ahmedabad, and the Kheda, you'll see that Mahatma Gandhi focused on the grassroots levels, and then he believed to put up a superstructure over the structure that has been built at the ground, live in. So let us first discuss about the story of Champaran. So Champaran is basically a place in the state of Bihar. It is very famous for the cultivation of indigo. So the story of Champaran begins in the early 19th century when European planters had involved the cultivators in agreements that forced them to cultivate the indigo in 3 by 20th of their holdings. This area, the 3 by 20th, is known as the Tin Kathia system, and the peasants or the cultivators were forced to grow indigo. The problem with growing indigo is basically there is a loss of fertility in the soil. Yes, so problem with the growing or cultivating the indigo is that the soil loses its fertility, and that is why it is not suitable for the farmers to grow indigo. But since they were forced to grow the indigo, they had no other option. If they want to escape from growing the indigo, they have to pay a huge amount as a fine. But during the 19th century, the indigo became unremunerative as the European planters imposed higher taxes to compensate their losses in the international trade at that period of time. This is because the Germany also started producing the indigo, but this indigo was the synthetic one, which was easy to grow and it did not take a lot of cash or did not involve a lot of money for the growth of the indigo. So the cultivators of Champaran were facing a lot of financial crisis and they took a help of Mahatma Gandhi to address this problem. Mahatma Gandhi referred to this problem to the magistrate of Champaran at that period of time and he formulated a committee and an inquiry took place. This all activity was covered or it gained a publicity and it looked into the grievances of the Champaran cultivators. This led to the abolition of this Tinkathia system and it was a victory for the Mahatma Gandhi and the people who were supporting Gandhi that the cultivators of Champaran were free from the cultivation of indigo. The next is the Ahmedabad. In the Ahmedabad, Gandhi reached Ahmedabad in the February of March of 1918 and he intervened in the Ahmedabad mill strike, a purely internal conflict which was going between the Gujarat mill workers and their owners. The mill owners attempted to end the plague bonus in 1917, which led to the confrontation despite Gandhi's mediation attempts. This strike was notable because it was the first time the Mahatma used the weapon of a hunger strike and it won the workers a 35% increase in its wages. It also led to the Textile Labor Association of 1920 being formed and grounded on Gandhian philosophies of peaceful arbitration of disputes, independence of capital and labor, and owners being trustees for their workers. So, this was a victory again for Mahatma Gandhi and while dealing with the cases of Ahmedabad mill workers, Gandhi also came across to know about the Kheda district, which is again in the Gujarat. The peasants of the Kheda districts were in extreme distress due to a failure of crops, and the government ignored their appeals for the remission of the land revenue. Gandhi functioned into the remission. He looked into that the peasants are freed from the taxes that have to be paid and he filed appeals and petitions against the government to look into this case and asked the peasants to fight on to the death. After a certain period of time, government directed that the revenue should be recovered only from those peasants who could pay and the movement was withdrawn. So by the beginning of the 1919, Gandhi had become one of the most prominent leaders in the country.